We met at a brick house here at Evangelical Covenant Church, and it was, we both have different stories as to how we met.
But the way I remember it was that we were at a Bible study at the Weagle's house for a brick house in the summer. And it was pretty much when the brick house was just getting going. I think it was the first summer of brick house. And I remember I was at the Bible study, and Kellie and her sister Melissa were there, and I remember I had just met them that night, and I do remember thinking that there was something, I do specifically remember Kellie being there, and for some, I don't know why, but for some reason she stood out.
I remember him, the first time I remember meeting him was, I think it was like the first night of the summer session, and it was in 2001, I think. I'm really bad with numbers, but I walked in the door and I saw him sitting there. He was standing next to Dave, and I just looked at him, and I'm just like, it was weird because it was like something different, like about him. It was like, I wanted to get to know him more, and I wanted to find out who he was.
And brick house is pretty much where we kept seeing each other, and we became friends. And I guess when things started really getting serious was when we both got invited to Burt and Kristen's wedding. We were both there, and got to a point where people were up and dancing, and I'm sitting there, and I see Kellie sitting over there. I'm like, hey, I'll ask her to dance. So we danced, and also that night, Tamar played a key role in that. At one point, we were up there fast dancing, the fast line. Tamar was nearby, and Kellie was nearby. And Tamar comes up and takes my hands and starts, fast dancing with me. So I'm like, hey, this is cool. And, so I'm just having fun. Then all of a sudden she reaches over and grabs Kellie's hand. So, I joined the group. So I'm dancing with two girls here. So I'm like, hey, this is great.
She often disappeared and left us, and so we ended up dancing by ourselves. It was interesting.
So later on that night, Kellie and I were slow dancing again. And, I'm dancing. I look over at Tamar, and she's sitting here going, thumbs up, way to go.
We didn't start dating until February 23rd of 2002, and he came to my work and stayed with me until I was done with my shift, and then we went, he drove me to my car, and he asked me to go out with him, and he gave me this necklace, and I've never taken it off.
Well, I proposed, it was actually on New Year's Eve of 2002. I bought the ring the weekend of Thanksgiving, and I knew that Christmas, her birthday, and New Year's were all in 1 week.
I'd been hoping that he was going to ask me for for weeks, and he never did, and he kept dropping hints that he was going to, and it never happened, and my birthday came and he didn't ask me, and I was all getting depressed. And so when he called me, I didn't think anything of it.
New Year's was the best shot, and it turned out that she was hosting a party at her house for some of her friends and my friends, and so I'm like, okay, that'll work. Maybe I was thinking of doing, strike a midnight type of thing, but in the end, I just decided, this is for Kellie and I, and I don't want there to be any pressure, or, I just want it to be us. So I told her that I was coming to the party, and but on my way there, I told her that I needed to pick her up and take her to the mall, because I just came up with this dumb excuse that I needed to buy a card for my grandmother. Now, there's no reason why I would be buying a card for my grandmother, but I just made some lame excuse that I needed to go to the mall to get this card. So she says, okay. She got in the van, we drove over to the mall. As we're going over to the mall, she's like, oh, well, we could stop over at Stop and Shop and do that. But I'm like, no, we'll just go over to the mall, because I already had this whole thing figured out. I went over and parked relatively the same area where I had asked her out. So this is the history of why I took her to the mall parking lot.
Oh, give me the money, I'll go get you the card. And he goes, well, hang on. And so he pulls the chair around, and I'm thinking, he's going to get his wallet or whatever. And he stops and he looked at me, and I'm just like, what are you doing?
I waited until just as she was about to get out of the van to go into the mall to buy this alleged card. And I said, can you hold on a second? And she still at this point didn't know what was coming, but you know, we've had these conversations before. And my van is kind of my place where I have my conversations. So,
you know, I really feel like God wants us to be together. It's just, you know, I've prayed a lot about it, and I really feel like, you know, you're the one that God sent to me. And he said, "Can you open the glove compartment?" I said, "No," because it was at that moment I knew what was in there. And
so I opened the drawer, pull out the box, the ring's there. You know, I asked her, "Kellie, Marie, Tracy, will you marry me?" And
so he opened it and he handed me the box, and I just started. I was sitting there. I was just like, you know, I was in shock. I was so excited. And he's just like, "Are you gonna answer me?" And I like forgot to answer him because I was just like sitting there like, oh my goodness, it was so exciting.
Eventually, she managed to acknowledge me at least, and I'm like, "Okay, is that a yes?" And she said yes, and I put the finger on her. Her hand was shaking. I don't know if it was just her. Maybe it was just both our hands shaking, but you know, I got the ring on her finger, and she said yes, and we then, you know, went over to the party. I actually had my parents camped out in the parking lot waiting for us so they could follow us back to her parents' house so we could, you know, tell everyone the news. So my parents were in on it, but everyone else, it kind of came as a surprise when we got there. Like, oh, by the way, we're engaged. So.
And so that whole night we just went and we were calling all his family and all his friends. It was exciting.